Oh, there we go.
Stay by the microphone.
We're live, everybody, just so you know. And another probably 30 seconds or so, we'll start. Oh, how about now? Because it's 4:30. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our District of Tofino regular council meeting for Tuesday, August 25th. I'll call our meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. and begin by recognizing that we are conducting our business today here on Tla-o-qui-aht territory. And also note that we are recording our meeting and it is going to be published on the district's YouTube channel, and we may have some people who are watching as well through the Zoom channel today. So I will ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster, seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Thank you. That's everyone, and the motion is carried. And we have some minutes from the regular council meeting that was held August 11th for adoption. Move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded adoption. Any errors or omissions that were noted? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None. Motion is carried. Do we have anybody signed up on the Q&A, Elise?
No, no one has signed up.
Okay, then we'll move into our delegation, which is Ian Scott from the Tofino Housing Corporation. So Ian is joining us from Victoria via Zoom. And now take it away, Ian. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Just confirming that technology is working and you can all hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Excellent. And I have a brief presentation to make for you and for the public this afternoon. So thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for having me last week at the Special Committee of the Whole meeting. I thought it would be helpful to sign up as a delegation and just to reiterate some of the things that we talked about last week, as well as to be able to answer questions and to put before you 3 resolutions. In preparing my presentation for today, I realized that it would make sense, given how this is being set up, that a 3rd resolution be put in place so that it's clear to BC Housing how this is all fitting together. And so there's the 2 resolutions in your council package, as well as a 3rd, which would authorize staff to initiate the process of transferring the rezoned land to the Tofino Housing Corporation. And I'll conclude my presentation by putting those 3 resolutions on the screen for you. So these are the lands that were recently rezoned, still owned by the District of Tofino and still part of the larger District Lot 114. We have initiated the subdivision process, and through the funds that are being used by the Tofino Housing Corporation for these projects, will complete the subdivision. And once that is done, then the lands could be formally transferred to us. And so I think you're well aware of it, but to remind you, there's the 5 lots, the 2 apartment lots, and the 3 duplex lots. When you look at that in subdivision format, the effect is really 5 new lots, as well as a new road dedication where the public road would be built along with the servicing that goes in the road, the water, the sewer, etc. Phase A, or the first apartment development to be built, would be the 35 units on lot 2. Phase B, the second development, would be 37 units on lot 1. And then there are the 3 duplex lots. Just again, to remind everyone of the context, which is we're not talking about a huge portion of DL 114. The lands being subdivided and transferred or proposed to be transferred to the Housing Corporation are a small component of DL 114, and my understanding of the resolutions that have been passed are that there will be a process where we'll look at whether there will be any additional development beyond this, these 5 lots on DL 114. Nonetheless, the current policy suggests that that is the likely direction, and so because of that, we have allowed for the possible extension of the roadways into DL 114. And then, of course, there is the consideration of, of what's happening in and around the community hall and the possible recreation center. So what is the structure? The structure is that the THC will be the landowner for the apartment lots, but we will lease those apartment lands to the Catalyst Community Development Society, and a registered nonprofit society here in BC. We will execute that lease with Catalyst when the type of development and likely funding is confirmed. And I say likely funding because as we did on Sharp Road, we executed that lease with Catalyst so they could then get a loan backed by the lease to allow them to complete substantial pre-development work in advance of getting financing and funding confirmed from CMHC. The latest email we got today was that financing, we should have a letter of intent coming from them within 2 or 3 weeks, and then moving on to their term sheet and then financing that development. We would execute the lease and development agreement together. The lease covers the long-term 60+ years that Catalyst has the right to lease the land. The development agreement covers that period in between signing those agreements and getting to the development in terms of which party is doing what. We obviously want to monitor the development whereby Catalyst is the executor and then eventual owner. As I discussed last time, the lease provides the THC with an option to purchase the development, so not the land, because we still own the land, but to purchase the building at the point that we think we're ready for that, if and when we get to that point. There is, though, a period of time, 5 years, 7 years, excuse me, from the signing of the lease until we have that right. And then in terms of the duplex lots, we would be effectively the developer of those lots. And our current plan has us selling one of those lots for market housing, in part to finance then the portions of the development. And then the other 2 duplexes would be built and sold as price-restricted, resident-restricted housing. So the MOU is really the formal statement by the District of Tofino that you are agreeing to this development structure and transferring that land to the Tofino Housing Corporation. And then it specifies the contribution and responsibilities of THC and Catalyst to each other. Of course, without that land, having those responsibilities to each other is a moot point. And then provides the key lease terms that are being based off of the lease that we signed together on Sharp Road. Fitting into that then, in terms of how this development fits together, is the request that the district continue with the process to sell the 1-bedroom unit at Gateway for $195,000. This is about a 25% discount to the assessed value, and that would be sold only at such time as that we have presented to and council has approved housing agreement, which then controls not only the price of that first sale, but subsequent sales. So it stays as a price restricted unit, like the Sea-Otter unit that was recently sold, and like we intend to do for those duplex lots on DL 114. Obviously a 1-bedroom, 490 square foot home on at Gateway, or the 650 square foot home at Sea-Otter, is serving a different family or a different household than would a half duplex with a secondary suite in it on District Lot 114. And obviously over time, we'd be looking to, fill the different segments of that affordable home ownership need through future projects. And then just to wrap it all up, the capital plan and development structure, is then twofold. For the below market rental apartments, we have Catalyst financing the development of those 2 lots. When I mean financing, I mean they're taking on the substantial debt required to build those buildings. They're contributing some equity, although the majority of the equity being contributed is by the district and THC through land, some cash equity, and a 50% DCC waiver according to the current bylaws. But the bigger capital contributions by quite some measure would come from BC Housing if we're successful in our September 4th grant application to the Community Housing Fund. And also then pairing that with a CMHC co-investment application, And those two programs provide lower interest and longer amortization financing, which helps bring down the total cost to Catalyst, which then translates into lower rents. BC Housing does also offer an operational subsidy, which may or may not be included here depending on the participation of CMHC. And then part of where the gateway sale comes in is to raise some additional cash so that THC can fund the road share for Lot 2, which is the second of the 2 apartment developments, as well as the duplex lots, fund the $535,000 share of the $890,000 cost for putting in that new road and the servicing within it. So each of those projects effectively is absorbing a proportionate share of that new road and servicing into their projects, but we have to front end that cost until we get confirmation of funding for Lot 2. And as we talked about last week, we're at the moment pretty confident of getting funding for Lot 2, but less confident for Lot 1. And I see as I'm talking, there's a typo in my slide there. That should be the $535,000 for our road and servicing share for Lot 1 or Phase B and the duplex lots. And then, as I said, the duplex lot expectation is that we're selling one lot as a market sale that helps us pay back our loans for that road and servicing construction. And then the other townhouses or duplexes, excuse me, are sold at below cost, sort of at cost and below market. But what that relationship is still to be determined. And there may be some decisions, and there need to be some decisions made by the Tofino Housing Corporation as to how much we might, in effect, subsidize that cost below market, buying, in perpetuity that reduced market price. And those are future decisions of ours. And so with that, I put the 3 resolutions up on the screen. 2 of them are in your report. The third is really just confirming that staff should start the process of transferring those 5 lots, the 2 apartment lots and 3 duplex lots to the THC. We need both the apartment lots and the duplex lots for all of this to fit together in terms of the financing and funding requests that we're putting into BC Housing and CMHC. And so with that, I can take any questions. I have the slides from last week that I can pull up if you have any detailed questions on the MOU or capital plan and those things that we discussed. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you very much, Ian. And so we have the delegation and we have the opportunity to ask Ian questions, and then we are going to consider the correspondence and these resolutions right after. So if everybody is okay with this, we'll kind of blend them maybe a little bit and have that opportunity to ask questions about anything that is in his correspondence. It's a little unusual. We don't usually do things this way, but if everyone's okay with that. Okay, no concerns. All right, so questions for Ian, first of all. Professor Anderson?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Anyone?
I just had one question. Ian, thanks a lot, and I appreciate some of the inclusion of the language since last time, so I do appreciate that quite a bit. Just a quick explanation of the change in one of the references in the MOU to change 50% to 75% for the share, THC share, if THC chooses to purchase from Catalyst. I didn't understand the explanation of that. Sounds good. I just didn't fully understand it.
Great.
Do you know what I'm talking about here? No?
He's still on.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Sorry, I put myself on mute there. I made a wild guess that might be the question or one of the questions that might be asked. And so I did put together a little Excel sheet if you need it. But really what that is about is the share between how we're sharing the 2 parties in any accrued value between fair market value and the mortgage price. So the lease specifies that the fair market value is based on the income approach to appraising a property. Obviously, this would, at the time of us buying this property, it would be very unique product in the Tofino marketplace in terms of being an affordable housing apartment building. It does have value because it's providing revenue, And if you didn't have debts and expenses, you could make money off of it. And so over time, there will be an enhanced value, just like any other multifamily property. When you look at the sale of affordable housing projects across the province, which happen very rarely, but they do happen, there is a discount to the market price in terms of the, what that looks like compared to a market building, because it's bringing in less revenue. So the fair market value is the fair market value as determined by an appraiser, and there are options for additional, opinions. And then what we've said is that our price owing to Catalyst will subtract then the amount between the amount left on the mortgage, because at minimum, Catalyst needs to be able to pay off their mortgage. So if they're going to be selling us the property, they're not selling it at a loss. So what is the difference between the amount remaining on the mortgage and the amount that the fair market value is? And we'll subtract from that difference from the price that we have to pay. So, and that's maybe where the Excel sheet would come in handy if you can give me that liberty. What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So these numbers, and I'm just going to try to zoom this in a little bit more so you can see it easier. No, I'm not going to be able to zoom it in. Can you see that at all on screen?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
for sure, yeah.
Okay, so in this example, and if we change the share to 50%, and this is just random, the market value is 4 million, the mortgage remaining is 300,000. So the difference between those two is $1 million. And in the case of us sharing it 50-50, then there's a discount in the price of $500,000. There's also a formula in the lease that we look at the operating surplus, the capital reserves, as well as the Hills Reserve, and that would be where we defer taking some of our equity, or Catalyst defers taking some of their equity out of the project and puts it in a pot of money to buy down the rents over time. So I'm just randomly said that number is $100,000. And so then our purchase price would be 4 million minus the price discount of 450,000, and actually should be plus this, not minus this. Anyway, it'd be 550,000 off of the $4 million price. So we'd be paying 3,450,000. If we change that to 75%, we have a much more significant discount from the market value. I'm not sure if my Excel sheet is working effectively, but that's the concept, is that because we're putting in more money into District Lot 114, we're getting a bigger discount to our price than we would on Sharp Road.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, that's kind of what I thought, but just
Okay.
a little clarification.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's good. Any other questions? Okay. Ian, would you mind putting up that slide that you had, please, of the 3 resolutions, because it's really helpful. I can read them off my sheet, but.
Yep, just a second.
Okay. You bet. Great. Okay, thanks. So maybe I'll turn council's mind to these.
I'm happy to move.
Please go ahead.
The council approve the memorandum of understanding with the Tofino Housing Corporation and Catalyst Community Development Society related to the transfer of a portion of the remainder Lot A, District Lot 114, Tla-o-qui-aht District, Plan 32751, to the Tofino Housing Corporation, and the development of 72 units of below market rental housing on 2 lots leased to the Catalyst Community Development Society. Thank you. Moved and seconded.
Any questions on this resolution? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. That's everyone. Motion carried.
I'll move that council approve the sale of the 101-605 Gibson Street for $195,000 as a price restricted resident restricted home, with the proceeds of the sale transferred to the Tofino Housing Corporation to support the development of the 2 apartment lots on DL 114, with said sale to occur only after a housing agreement has been approved and registered on title.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this resolution? Councillor Anderson?
Were that price is finalized at
Yes.
this point? And nothing would change that in between the time of, I'm just wondering if something changes in the market.
I think,
Meantime, between now.
yeah, I think if it's the best judgment of the Tofino Housing Corporation that should change, then it would come back to council and ask for it.
That's the only question I had.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Not opposed, motion carried. And the last one.
I move that council direct staff to initiate the process of the district transferring the proposed 2 apartment lots and 3 duplex lots that are to be subdivided from DL 114 to the Tofino Housing Corporation.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this last motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much, Ian.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on into the balance of the correspondence on our agenda. The first item, or the next item we'll consider is the letter from Robert Love regarding his incident with that electric bicycle on Chesterman Beach. And I think this is a really great opportunity to point out that the District of Tofino does have a survey open right now for all residents to take part in around e-bikes and e-mobility devices and their use in public spaces, including beaches and the multi-use path. So I've talked to staff about this already, and we're gonna take Robert's correspondence and use that as part of the feedback into that survey and process. But for everyone here to know that that's something you can push into your channels and get people to fill out that survey. It takes about 10 minutes. Or so, and it can be found at tofino.ca/cycling/e-bikes. Not the easiest one to get to, but if you actually have found out, if you Google Tofino and e-bikes, it's like the 2nd or 3rd on the Google list. So it's pretty easy to find. But did anyone have any questions about this? No. Okay. And then the last item of correspondence is the petition calling on more action in the Tofino Bylaw Enforcement Department. And so I wanted to start off just by saying to the people who developed and who signed the petition that I think the District of Tofino absolutely hears the frustration and concern that residents have and shares it. And that we would also be the first to admit that we are under-resourced this summer. And it has been very, very challenging and just difficult to keep up with the kind of volume of visitation that we've seen and that we just weren't prepared for. So I know that local government operations have been very impacted by COVID, the pandemic, and the uncertainty that's been created. And we're living some of the results of some of that uncertainty and just not having had a crystal ball earlier in the year and knowing exactly what we would be facing this summer. I do want to say thank you to Bob, because Bob has directly corresponded with the person who organized the petition. So thank you, Bob, for undertaking that on behalf of council. And I also want to say thank you to the staff who they've put together a very comprehensive list of actions and kind of context and why we're at the place that we're at, and that's on the Tofino website. And so thank you, Elise, and your team for putting that together and getting it circulating out into the public. I certainly have had a lot of, personally, I've had a lot of positive feedback from that, and just people understanding a little bit more about why we're in the situation that we're in. And, but I do also want to take a moment to say thank you, especially again, to the frontline workers in Tofino. And I think that the janitors and the laborers and our bylaw enforcement officers do, again, deserve that special call out, shout out to say thank you for the work they're doing. I think that it's a difficult job for them to do no matter what is going on. And I think the pandemic has created more stress, and it is obviously difficult sometimes to have a public facing job. And if you're a cashier at the co-op or a postal office worker, I mean, all of these frontline service jobs are difficult to do at the best of times. And I just want to say again, thank you to those people. I know that petitions are often used as a way to quickly express how we feel, and that the district can't respond as quickly as petitioners wish that we could. And I think that we all wish we could respond really quickly, but we know we can't. And we recognize that communication is a really key part of this. And I do want to encourage the people who signed the petition or who thought about signing the petition or who organized the petition to continue to reach out to the district and to ask us questions, and that we take on that responsibility too of communicating back out to the community about why things are the way they are, and continuing to build that understanding about local government operations and what's going on and how they're resourced. So I hope that people will continue to reach out. Their constructive suggestions are really important, and I think we need to cope and survive as best we can this summer with some quick adjustments that we're trying to make, not quickly enough, I know, for some folks, but also that we're really learning a lot this summer and taking those learnings and applying that so that we can plan better for next year. Personally, I think that COVID is going to be with us for quite some time. I think that COVID has really changed the face of tourism in many ways, and we can expect to live with some of the issues that we're seeing right now for a few seasons yet. And we're going to have to be resourced adequately for that. And that conversation too is also going to be difficult with the community when it comes to budgeting and talking about what it costs and how we'll pay for it. So I don't know, Bob, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Sure, just maybe a couple of things. I think it's been made known, and council is certainly aware that we made budget decisions and on staff's recommendation that we reduced resources expecting 20 to 50% of our normal visitors, and that's of course not what's happened. The other thing that we did do was we put some money aside in reserves for responding to things that we couldn't foresee or we didn't foresee. And we have been out in the marketplace trying to hire some seasonal help both in byline and public works, and that's proven quite difficult. Those of you who hired seasonal workers before, it's very difficult to do in the middle of the season. We have to do it at the start of the season, and that's another lesson learned for us, certainly. We've been working with RCMP to see if they can bolster their resources, and so some of you may have seen the tracks on the beaches from the weekend. The RCMP were out on ATVs in the evenings, having a presence there, and the response that their members have provided back to us is that was quite effective. And so I've been in contact with them, and if we can help them make more resources available for busier times. It will be sporadic, but getting that presence out there I think is good. The other thing that we want to be, of course, doing for next year is not just responding with more bylaw, and I appreciate that that's what the request is, but I think that one of the things that we want to do is, one, work with partner organizations, so Parks Canada, who are experiencing the very same thing in parks. The province and provincial campgrounds are experiencing the very same things that we're frustrated by here, which is just numbers and the types of visitors that they just have never seen before. And then start looking upstream as much as we can. How do we get to the root of some of these new phenomena that we're seeing? And from my perspective, this is not Tourism Tofino out there marketing to people to come and sleep in their vans on Lynn Road or anywhere else. This is something else that's happening. We're going to try to, and Tourism Tofino has started on this, we're going to try to explore what's going on out there and see if we can help with message or help get our message out there as well, and start with a little more vigorous enforcement when next summer season starts.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Has this brought up any questions around the staff about, it comes up quite often, but campfires? Has that kind of reinvigorated those conversations? I know it's
thanks for the question. Yes, we've started talking about campfires again, and I think that if we put 7 people in a room, there are 7 different opinions about campfires. I'm to the point where I'm kind of over them, and that's a difficult thing to say, but I think that seeing driftwood getting burned and so on, I think we've got to be more. I think the first thing for us to try is to be more proactive during those evening hours when people are starting fires, and also we do have issues of signage fatigue, but getting the message out there as much as we can. You don't burn driftwood, your fire's got to be out. You have to have the means of putting out the fire, those kinds of things. And again, more resources that we'll be asking council for in the budget process that we've now started on as staff, but we'll be asking council for resources so we can do that. Get out there and get people aware that having a fire is a privilege, and it's something that's disappearing for much of the world. But there are responsibilities that come with having that privilege.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Councillor McQuaid? Oh, and then we'll go to Councillor Steer, since he's already going for the unmute button.
Thank you, Mayor Osborne and Bob, and I really appreciate your comments, Josie and Bob. And Bob, the one that I appreciate the most right now is that staff and hopefully council will be involved in the looking upstream for the mechanisms that create the issues. And whenever that is, whatever mechanisms you choose, I would certainly like to be a part of those conversations. And I think it's great that you've identified that at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McQuaid?
Yeah, I wanted to, I thank you for both you and Theo McPherson for the words. And I think that while it's very important that we're thinking critically about what's happening this season, as Councillor Steer gestured to, like upstream, we have some issues here that I think the District of Tofino people forget that we are not immune to, and those are issues of housing and hiring and infrastructure. And I think the petitioners point to a really important tension, and we have capacity and people and space issues that are becoming more evident. And I just wanted to make sure and encourage those same people to be equally as involved in conversations about housing. You know, I think that it's one of those upstream solutions that we need to look critically at and support in ways that we can, you know, we can look for bylaw and offer them a place to live is a conversation that we need to be having. So yeah, I'm grateful for people who are active and are looking to the health and wellness of their community. And as you mentioned, I would encourage them to reach out to any of us to talk further.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor McMaster?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt this is an unusual year with a pandemic, but I think the issues that we've got have been growing year after year since I've been on council. And all we've heard is we've got to educate people more, we've got to educate people more. Well, if I had a kid and I was in school and I heard that, I've been hearing it for 9 years now, I think I'd be changing schools or thinking of an alternative. I don't think education or the way we're delivering the message is not working. I feel sorry for bylaw. I think they're trying to do a job. I don't think we as council staff are probably backing them up as much as we should. And I think they've got a thankless job. I think they're almost a laughing stock of the town because people just don't think they'll do anything. And I feel sorry for those guys. So I think coming up, this council has really got to start looking at this issue and what we're going to do. And I've heard councillors Thick and Thorogood say we've got to be more hard-nosed in the past. And I've heard them get lectured about where you've got to let people have the Tofino experience. Well, this is the Tofino experience. I don't think that's what we want.
Thank you. I don't think anybody would say this is the Tofino experience. And I do think, I mean, yeah, things that have happened this summer have crossed lines that have never been crossed before in a way that I think galvanizes us all to look at things like fine structures and what the fines are. Certainly, I think Bob has some comments on that because they've already had internal discussion around that.
You know, one of the things we should do is look at fines and look at how our bylaws are set up. In, I want to say, second week of July this year, we stopped with the educational warnings. And it's, you're camping illegally, we catch you, you get a ticket. That's, you know, I appreciate the comments that councillors are making about bylaw. That's a really tough job where our bylaw staff are getting it from all sides. They're hearing from the community who are understandably frustrated. They call and they don't get a response back right away. And they think it's falling on deaf ears. And then at the same time, they get it from, you know, people who they're trying to enforce upon. But you know, I really want to give credit to our bylaw staff. They're doing what they can. We're doing some things differently with hours of enforcement that I'm not going to describe publicly. But we're trying to take some different approaches and catch people at different times. it's so widespread, we just can't get everywhere in a single, like in a 5-hour period. It is that widespread. So again, we'll look at resource levels so we can be more places at one time next year.
Thank you. I think it's also worth noting when we're looking at upstream reasons for why we're seeing what we're seeing, that Tofino isn't alone. And that this is being seen in national parks across Canada. This is being seen in other resort municipalities, that these, we're starting to hear more and more in the media of this kind of behavior all over Vancouver Island, for example. And so that, I think, begs a bigger societal question of why are people behaving this way in the first place? And that's something that I don't think the tourism industry in British Columbia, the province, all people sort of, in charge, or us, about why we're asking people to visit and how we're asking them to behave. We haven't really thought about those issues very much. And it's really interesting to me how the public health office has gotten so involved in the conversation across BC about COVID matters. And there needs to now be a conversation across BC about travel matters. And I think the increasing prominence of Indigenous nations in tourism and asking for people to behave in certain ways, and even what we've seen from First Nations in whose territory we are and who neighbor us about what their expectations are for people when they come to their territory it's a bigger conversation. So we're not going to solve it all alone, and I wouldn't expect us to. But I think that as a council, and I think as one of the most prominent destinations in British Columbia, we have a voice unlike a lot of other places, and we should use it. So bigger things. But anything else to say at this point, Bob?
Yeah, just was reminded of one thing during the conversation. If I could, if I know councillors get comments, from members of the public, and for anybody who's listening, or if this gets, any other members this gets, please contact bylaw. And if someone doesn't pick up, please leave a message. Take a deep breath and leave a polite message, if you would, please. It's difficult for us to return all the calls, but we do log these things so that we get a good sense for what's going on out there, so that not only can we, if we don't have, get to it within a few hours to respond, it's passed us by, but we get a sense of what's going on so that we can start to think about how to resource and put in place mechanisms so that those kinds of things don't continue to happen.
That's great to know.
Good. Okay, Councillor Anderson.
I'm just, I'm curious to know, I've heard sort of statements that somehow there's another part of social media that is portraying Tofino as this place where you can get away with this kind of behavior easily, or our beaches are free compared to the parks and so on. So I'm wondering if I don't know where that message is coming from, but I've heard that that news spreads this way, and I don't know how we can control that part of it, but I'd be interested to know if there's anything behind it.
It's a good question. As Tourism Tofino has commented several times, the people who are going to read the materials they're sending out are not the people who are coming here and conducting these behaviors. These are other channels. These are other communication methods. These are other reasons why people are coming here. But there's no denying the fact that we're on the map, and it's a cool place to come. And there's a lot going on right now in people's lives that gives them the freedom to be able to travel. Some folks have got some money and some time that they didn't have last year.
And gathering outdoors is
yeah,
one of the only outlets for people with certain gathering restrictions, some bars not open, etc. So.
Okay, we will move on. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we're going to move into our presentations and reports, and we have Nyla coming in to talk about the financial plan amendment bylaw. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you in person.
Nice to see you as well. So I just have a brief introduction to the report in your agenda packages today regarding an amendment to the 2020 to 2024 financial plan bylaw. This report or this amendment is being brought forward as a result of Council's resolution at the June 23rd Council meeting, where staff was authorized to prepare an amendment to the financial plan equal to the expenditures from the balance of the proceeds from the sea otter sale. And the balance of those proceeds are sitting in the Capital Works Reserve Fund, and an agreement would be prepared in order to transfer the funds and ensure that they are expended in the manner that is appropriate and allowed for as per the Capital Works Reserve Fund bylaw. So the balance of the proceeds that are sitting in the Capital Works Reserve Fund can be spent in respect of land, capital projects, machinery or equipment, extension or renewal of existing capital works. The estimated proceeds, including interest up to July 31st, and it's estimated at this time is $64,911, will be transferred to the Tofino Housing Corporation for the purpose of developing capital projects related to affordable housing. So if Council approves the recommendation in the report today, which is all introduction and 3 readings of the financial plan bylaw, we are also able to recommend adoption in the same meeting because it is related to the financial plan. Then staff will work to prepare an agreement with the THC and execute it to ensure that the funds are expended in the manner appropriate. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Nyla. Any questions? Okay. I'll move to the District of Tofino 2020-2024 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1283.01, attached to the report dated August 25th, 2020, be introduced and read a first, second, and third time.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried.
And then I'll move that the District of Tofino 2020-2024 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1283.01, attached to the report dated August 25th, 2020, be adopted.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final comment? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And do you want to talk about the debt?
Laura Services here too.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hello. Nice to see all of you.
Nice to see you in person too.
Yeah, it's been a while. So you have in your agenda package the report, which is regarding the establishment of the Debt Servicing Reserve Fund bylaw. I do want to make a correction to the recommendations. We're actually only bringing this bylaw forward for readings today because we're not authorized to adopt this type of bylaw in the same meeting. And this debt servicing reserve fund will be established to cover the cost of interest and principal payments on debt incurred by the district. And the money that's acquired from property taxation levied for the purpose of debt servicing will go into this reserve fund, and the establishment of this bylaw will formalize and restrict how these funds can be spent. So a specific example of money going into this reserve fund is the $32,000 that was collected in 2019 for the temporary borrowing related to the wastewater treatment plant. If you have any questions?
Questions? I think not. All right.
Yeah, I'll move that District of Tofino Debt Servicing Reserve Fund Bylaw number 1291/2020, attached to the report dated August 25, 2020, be introduced and read first, second, and third time.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You as well. All right. Next, Erin. It's sort of like calling the kids up. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
I want to stand first. Put my pen.
Afterwards. It's just fine.
Move it down.
Do they move it down?
I'm going to do their job.
I don't know. Dr. Brownie Henry and Minister Dix don't do it when they shift.
I feel like they're in each other's.
I feel like they probably are.
I don't know why they're always late.
Pardon me?
Probably why they're always late to the press conference.
Today I will be presenting an update on indoor recreation facility and potential grant applications. The presentation should take about 5 minutes. I'm happy to take any questions or any report. So this project, this presentation addresses a project that has long been identified as a community need. This project was the subject of a previous application to the CCR grant stream. And this presentation also describes a number of recent grant opportunities and sort of discusses shovel readiness, which spell check will pick up. The indoor recreation facility, I know not all of council was here at the last time that we proceeded with this, I don't think. But just to remind everybody, it's a 13,000-foot gymnasium and recreational cultural space. It's designed for the regional population of both Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations and Tofino and accommodate our growth over the next 20 years. The building, as currently designed, would accommodate 700 persons and could be used for a number of different types of events. The original pricing from the architects at a Class C estimate was about 6.6 million. And then following some work with quantity surveyors and estimators, we ended up with the project in about the $10 million range, which was the amount that we applied for last year, which we didn't get. The application was well received. We spoke to the project officer, it was probably about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. I think they told everybody they have good applications, because I know the multiplex are saying theirs is a good application as well. So I think it's what you say to people when you're being kind for saying no. There were some concerns raised that we'd want to think about as a municipality if we were to move forward with this project. One is just the fact that we've been very successful in recent grant applications. Particularly, they mentioned Bars Mountain water reservoir upgrades or rebuild, and then the wastewater treatment plant, obviously. And the second point there sort of ties into that. They attempt to have some sort of fairness in regional distribution, and we have a bit of a gravity with us here in Tofino in our recent grant applications. There were some questions about the cost to access proposed facility. A bit of confusion about what a community facility looks like. So there are some programs that cost to use, like gymnastics or boot camp, and there's other stuff that's free. We didn't explain that clearly enough, and so that would be something we'd want to address in a future application. And then again, I think probably the biggest point that was raised was there's some confusion about two similar applications coming from this part of the world. That would be the District of Tofino's project and also the West Coast Multiplex project. I think as well, we would want to check in again with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation if we were to move forward with future grant application. So the two grants that we looked at applying for, both released recently, were the RNC grant, which has a funding envelope of $58.7 million. It's 100% funding. The deadline is October 22nd. We were kind of excited when we first read about this. It was a $10 million limit. It sort of fit in with our project scope. But after some conversations with the province, it quite quickly became evident that they were looking to fund programs in and around the $2 million range, not $10 million. And so then we looked again back at the CCR stream, which is a second intake. This one's $100.6 million. Same funding setup as we had on the previous application. An application deadline that's a lot more, on October 2nd, so we'd have to get something in sooner. And then just looking at all the mechanics of that, it just started really to become clear that it wasn't going to be in the cards to apply for either of those two grant applications this time around. We also are concerned with the wastewater treatment plant uncertainty about what's happening with that project. The fact that we may still have to borrow significant funds for that. There's uncertainty around COVID, obviously, and so the borrowing risks to the municipality are a pretty big concern for us, specifically related to the projects that fund 73.3% of the funds. It's not to say the district cannot apply for a project. We've been talking to Mr. Work at Engineering and Public Works about potentially applying for the Bay Street water treatment plant upgrades. From my understanding, that's in and around $1 million project at this time, and I think Fraser's looking at it a little bit more closely now. It fits under the RMC grant, which is that's the first grant I spoke about, and it's 100% funding. And so maybe an opportunity for the district to apply for something else that might be also useful for the district. And then finally, we understand that there's potentially another grant coming down the pipe, a federal stimulus grant for projects up to $10 million for shovel-ready projects. It's a really tight timeline on those turnarounds. So if we are still planning to move forward with the indoor recreation facility project, we will want to have shovel-ready designs ready to go. Sort of to do with one of the recommendations we're going to talk about today. What does shovel-ready mean? Well, that means having a project that's pretty much ready to tender and that can be turned around and built within a couple of years. What we are proposing to do now, and there's a little bit of a change, an update for council of the recommendation that's in the report now. We'd want to sort of confirm that the costing that we've had previously is still accurate, and to sort of to bring that range of $6.6 million to $10 million down to something that's a little bit more precise. That doesn't necessarily mean upgrading the Class B estimates. The recommendation to council was to upgrade those estimates to a tune of $115,000. There may be a better way to do this that's more like $5,000. At least we can move the ball a little bit further, with the consideration that we may need to Class B design drawing in the future, but probably not right now. This would also give some time to talk to the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and also have a really solid discussion with the Multiplex Society about the two projects. We're in a situation now, and I joked to Bob earlier today, of mutually assured destruction. If we both continue applying for these grants, neither projects can go forward. So something's got to give. And whether that's us stepping away and allowing that process to unfold, or whether it's agreement not to apply for the same grants anymore, or something else, the district is backstopping the operating costs or operating deficits from a future facility, as Tla-o-qui-aht is. And I think we need to have a really serious conversation, and I'm not sure if it's at a staff level or political level, with the Multiplex Society, with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, about what this region is looking for in terms of recreation. That being said, it would be nice to bring our project a little bit closer to shovel readiness, so that if a grant application comes up that's perhaps only for municipalities to apply for, or something similar, we would be in a position to turn around and apply for that. So again, the timeline right now is not as critical as it was when we were writing the report. And I think that I would recommend that we pause on the Class B design drawings for now. I think council now is aware of what shovel readiness might look like and the costs. And in the meantime, consider a project cost review from a construction perspective. This was an avenue that was described by the Tofino Housing Corporation, and we actually reached out to that same company that the Tofino Housing Corporation is using for Sharp Road to try to get a realistic number on our construction costs. We have spoken to also to local developers who've done large projects recently. We've spoken to Tim Hackett. From what I understand, it's the premium in Tofino is not as high as some people would think for a multifamily building from an experienced contractor. You're looking at more like 10 to 15%. Construction is expensive everywhere right now, but the premium Tofino for that type of building is a little bit less than we thought. I'm not sure what a municipal facility would look like. Obviously, it's not as complicated as a wastewater treatment plant. So there may be some opportunity to further define that cost and bring it down to a level that's maybe fundable by a higher level of government. So if you could have someone review it and the funding comes back in between $6 and $10 million, that may look more attractive to a future funder at 100% than $10 million does right now. So that would be part of that proposal. I also have drawings and renderings of the facility if anybody would like to see it, because I just like myself, so I put them on the slide. We don't have to go through them, but if you say, hey, I can't remember what that looks like, and I can show you some really great drawings. I would just say one last thing is that as we pause now at this point, we're kind of at a junction of two processes. We can continue on in the future with Class B estimates with our architects, which will get us down to shelf readiness, which will spend some money to do so. We could also pause and go a different direction where we tender out the Class C drawings and have a design build based off of those. And so this is kind of it's like kind of fork in the road. And with if you go in the first way through the Class B designs, you know what you're getting. You see a beautiful design, this big timbers, this attractive building. If you go the other way, you'll get what you need, which is a facility that's dry and indoor and safe, but maybe cheaper because perhaps you could do structural engineering, steel engineering or something like that. So we haven't made a decision which way to go, but just this is a point where we could go either way. Hopefully that was illuminating.
I'd like to see the drawings. I'm just drawing.
Thanks, Councilor. We just get
They're really beautiful.
there you go.
Oh, look at that.
Just imagine choir in there, gymnastics, 700 people cheering your names.
Like your name?
Oh, your names.
So Aaron,
Anderson.
am I understanding correctly that maybe at this point you're actually asking us to consider a motion that would authorize staff to proceed with a project cost review for up to 5,000?
For up to 5,000. That's exactly right.
And just one more big picture question before I set the moves with questions. How imperative is that decision to be made tonight?
It is not imperative. It is something that I would like to have council consider in the near term, so probably the next couple of months. I don't know when the federal stimulus money is coming. I do know if we were to go the route of Class B design drawings, it's about a 6 to 8 week turnaround to have those done. If we go this route of construction estimating and quality and engineering, it's about a 2 week turnaround period. So nothing needs to be decided today.
All right.
If I could just
Yes,
add
please,
one caveat to that, a bit of kind of subtext to all of this is, if council absolutely wants us to apply for these other grants, we should know that sooner rather than later. Like for the grants that are October, that we're recommending, that we're saying we don't think we should be applying for, but if council has a different view on that, we should know soon.
I will tell you right now, my view is that it would be politically inexpedient to apply for either of those grants. All right. Who has a question or would like to start us off? Councillor McMaster.
First of all, I tend to agree we shouldn't be applying for the grants. I don't want to go and borrow some more money in these times. I think it's time to exercise a pause. I mean, I think, I've always been an advocate for our own facility, but I think depending, what the result is of the multiplex for their grant application in October, if they're not successful, I think we should all take a step back and then talk to each other again. And I would say, when we talk to each other, we should be throwing the pool into the mix. Because it's still ridiculous that we live on the coast and we don't have a place for people to swim. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councillor Steer. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. And Duncan, I echo a lot of that conversation. As you know, I've been a strong supporter of the facility, and I agree totally with the encouraging the conversation with the other groups and entities that their goal is to provide recreational opportunities for our region. And if we keep that top and center as to why what the motivation is for this, and we all know the benefits to community for that. Included in that conversation, I think is appropriate. The multiplex is one. School District 70, I would also suggest, and of course, Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations, who are all actively involved in pursuing those types of opportunities for the community. I would also echo that this is not the right time to be applying for those grants. And a restart and a recharge, I think this is an appropriate time for that. I think everybody clearly understands the benefits and needs of this type of recreational opportunities in community for community. And I think this is the appropriate time, once again, to have that conversation, considering many of the things that are going on. You may have heard of the COVID. And so this would be a great opportunity to do that. I'm just wondering how the conversations, who and how we might initiate those conversations. I know they're informally, I've been having many of those, and we do have we do have one mechanism, the Recreation Commission, that acts as an advisory body. But I would throw that out there that as much as I like to have conversation, I would also like that mechanism to be in place for this to continue to move forward. And I do understand that the multiplex is now going to be applying for that October grant submission, and it may be just a time to pause and breathe. But I just would like that to be kept in mind, that I don't want this to drop off the table, as I do think it is, and I always have felt that is an important aspect of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law.
Just want to say, first of all, Aaron, thanks for all this work. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, and it's I know it's difficult to not get funding and to pause. And I just want to echo the other councillors that I'm all for pausing, but pausing with intention, and maybe even an increased determination to get some local amenities, recreation amenities. And so I don't know, it's a tough one. I just do want to reiterate, we have, I mean, the tourist season here is incredible. We've seen all the impacts on our community. We talked about it tonight. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to get worse, and just it highlights to me the need for community-focused efforts on our staff and from a political level to get something for our community, including recreation. It's a top priority. So that's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My views have all been said.
Councillor Anderson? Or how do you feel about the idea of going forward at this point with anyone with the cost review part, or just a general, or thoughts about meeting with the other parties?
Well, we were presented with a different report than what we're hearing today, and since the decision isn't imperative to make today, I'd like to sort of just sit back. I think the idea of a pause for this round of grant funding is supportable, but I don't want to see this disappear. As other councillors have said, it's a project that I've supported up until this point, and yeah.
I have a question for you, Erin. If we pause until after the multiplex applies, is that too long of a pause?
I don't think it's too long. Well, it may be too long of a pause. I think the issue being is the last time we applied, we didn't hear back for a year and a half. So it's not about the application. It's about when we receive feedback. So when I think about pause, I think about a month or two for us to give us time to have some of these other conversations that need to happen anyways. And so with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, with SD70, that would be a kind of pause. I can tell you, council, that after spending a lot of time with these grant applications, I'm not sure how the multiplex is fundable under their current plans. If they're putting forward another $18 million plan, it's quite clearly not within the funding envelopes there. And so even with us not applying, I'm not sure how that project moves forward under the current streams, as I understand them. And perhaps I'm missing something. So from my perspective, the pause is the pause to have the conversation, but I would want to advance the project somewhat through a revision of the cost estimate or the design drawings to Class B in the next month or two, so that if that federal stimulus funding comes down in November and it's full funded, it's 100% funding, and we have a viable project, I would like to apply. I understand the reticence and support not moving forward with the boring, because because of our uncertain situation, but 100% funding is a different ball of wax, and I want to make sure that if that opportunity comes through, that we don't miss it, and so that would be my only. And I can't tell you when it is. I don't know, Bob, if you've heard any tell of when that. No. So they've hinted that it's coming in my conversation with them, but they didn't really give a timeline.
In that case, I'd be supportive of the 5,000. Instead of pausing too long.
Thanks. Councillor McQuaid, anything to add? Yeah, I'd be in the same boat as Councillor Chalmers. I'd be happy to see a cost review up to $5,000 and to move forward from there. I get worried that we have too many council meetings or too many. We've seen how much has been coming up this season, and I'd hate to have something in the intervening time that sets us too far back. So I'd be happy to move on a cost review.
Okay, well, I think the most important thing we can do next is to sit down with the different groups and hash this out, as hard as it could be. And I think that, you know, to know that the Multiplex Society is going to move forward and that they're going to submit an application into one of these streams, again, to me is a signal that we're just on two different tracks right now. And I honestly feel that neither of us will be successful unless we bring these tracks together in some way, shape, or form. And it might be something that we're not currently even considering that's going to come up in the discussion with, say, School District 70 and their gym, and a conversation we had with them about 5 years ago. So I wonder, you know, I don't know what the best way to achieve that is, but I think it would be great if council at least is very unified in saying to School District 70, the Multiplex Society, and Tla-o-qui-aht, listen, we must sit down and talk about these issues and figure out if there's a way we can really unify on something that comes forward to Tofino and or the West Coast. Because I know in my conversations with folks like our MLA and our MP that it is unhelpful when we are not unified on this. And that is one more reason for them not only to look away from our proposals because they take up more than 10% of the total budget that they're going to allocate across British Columbia, but they're also just going to say, look, it's not politically expedient for them to deliver a capital project in this region where it's choosing sides. That's what it feels like, I think, for them. So I really think the best thing we can do is try to come together and find some kind of unity on a way to provide a service in a better way with, you know, a nice facility. And I'm also going to say I'm a little bit hesitant about the attractiveness of new things, and I still have a lot of concerns, as I've expressed all along with the multiplex, about the operating costs and that we kind of underestimate those, or we think very fortunate, you know, in an optimistic way about it's really going to be, but it turns out to be more than we thought. So I think we just have to be really realistic and honest with ourselves about what a new facility means in the community, whether it's a pool or a gym or, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the ice rink. So that's where I'm at. I think having the $5,000 spent towards the project cost review is a smart idea, because I do think being ready to act on some kind of stimulus funding, should it come through in like 100%, I don't know. And maybe this is a way we could talk to Gord about too, about what is going on at that level and when they expect to make announcements like that, just to not have a lost opportunity of not having something ready to go. I think that's a safe, less risky amount. I was never going to be in favor of spending $100 grand on the Class B estimates, but I don't have to say that, although I just said it. So, so I think it would be great if we entertained a motion around the authorizing staff to spend up to $5,000 on a project cost review that would, to a maximum of $5,000, that would come from, and I'm assuming would it come from the new municipal or contingency? Sorry?
Contingency.
Contingency, okay. So in that case, the motion would be then that the staff be authorized to proceed with a project cost review of the proposed gymnasium facility or recreation facility, pardon me, up to a maximum of $5,000 from the 2020 general contingency fund. Second? Okay, moved and seconded. Any final comment on that?
Just Councillor Steer, I noticed he had his hand up earlier.
Go ahead, Councillor Steer. My apologies.
No, it's okay. I think Josie, you actually articulated what I was going to bring forward in terms of conversation between the provinces and the players that are involved here. And so thank you for answering my comments.
You're welcome. Reading your mind. Okay, any other comment on the motion? Councillor Law?
Just before we shut this down, how can we assure that we'll move forward with those conversations? We need.
Okay, we will not shut this down. We'll consider this motion and vote on it, and then let's have a conversation about how to do that. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. So a little unusual to make motions like this on the fly, but I do think it might be good if we actually do make a motion and direct our staff to please do their very best at convening such a meeting as soon as possible. Because I think it's important to have it on the public record and to show that we really want to do this. We want to have that conversation. Do you think that's okay, Aaron, Bob? Yeah. Okay. So in that case, perhaps a motion to direct our staff to convene a meeting of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, School District 70, the Multiplex Society, and the District of Tofino to discuss recreation facilities in the region. Thank you. Any other discussion on that? Tom? Sorry, Councillor Steer?
Yeah, I think that's great. My only concern right now, unfortunately, with the SD70 and with is that they're heavily involved in the beginning of a very unique school year.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately the timing isn't great right now. Just thinking about the time frame of when to maybe initiate that conversation. Just being mindful that some of those organizations are immersed in a they're very busy.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much, and I know that Tla-o-qui-aht certainly has their hands full, and they have a number of priorities too. But I'm hoping that maybe the Multiplex Society I think they'll really understand what we're saying and do what they can too to help bring together the partners. Okay.
Are we missing Ucluelet being involved in the meeting? They are involved in the multiplex as well through the ACRD.
Yeah, I think we have a meeting that needs to focus on some of Tofino's interests first, but not to the exclusion of them all the way through. And I think the result of that will make it clear whether and how to involve the other groups. What do you think?
I'm with Bob. My assumption is that we'd be following those meetings or meeting, we'd be bringing a report back to council to report back.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I guess another question would be membership. Are we looking for staff to staff or combination of the staff and the council?
That's why I didn't put that in the motion.
All right, we'll just see what we need.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, that'll be a good conversation when it happens. All right, are Peter doing our next one, the Tofino Resort Marina?
Sure.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Aaron.
Thank you so much. It was nice being here in person. It was a bit giddy.
I understand. That's how I felt last time too.
Aaron, I have strong memories of the suit you wore the first time you presented the Recreation Center.
Bob and I had agreement with that. I won't get fired.
Well, that's parting words.
Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Are we ready to move straight into it?
Yeah, we sure are.
All right. So this presentation is concerning a zoning amendment that we've seen once before. It's for Tofino Resort and Marina at 634 Campbell Street. We're actually not really considering the upland property. This is more pertaining to the foreshore lease, the zoning currently in place for the foreshore lease. So a bit of background, the application was received July 19th of 2018. Permission to proceed was granted May 12th of this year. The service is operational, has been operational for the past couple of years in the current location. Originally, the applicant had understood that this was permitted under the Marine Community 1 zoning, I believe. But after consultation with our legal advice, they've advised us that the way that it is being used as a commercial service is actually not permitted within that zone. So the location, just on the image on the left there, shows the red outline of the entire foreshore lease. The area that we'll be kind of considering primarily for this particular zoning amendment application is the small blue box that's shown on the picture to the right. Just for council's information, I'll see if this is working. I can't actually point it out very well, I don't think, but there is one other small triangle up near the top of the lease there, near the northern part of the lease. That actually is also still zoned MC1. So we would like to also include that within this zoning amendment application. Essentially what we would be doing is matching up the W1 zoning with the existing foreshore lease outside of the C5 areas. So as mentioned, we're considering a zoning amendment to change portions of the foreshore lease from MC1 to W1. The amendment is essentially to allow the commercial airplane operation that happens there to pick up and drop off passengers within that particular area of the foreshore lease. So this is the entire lease here. This was provided by the applicant. It's not entirely accurate. They note that the W1 zoning is within the entire foreshore lease. According to our zoning maps, the area that is actually the restaurant area, so 1909, so the restaurant on the pier as well as the pub is actually part of the C5 zone, which is associated with the upland portion of the property. And the MC1 zone is that small kind of square to the right of the image. As well, there is a little kind of triangle of the MC1 zone that intrudes into, I believe it's the third finger from the left is kind of partially within that as well. So again, we would just kind of be matching up the existing foreshore lease with the W1 zone. Why it's kind of shaken out like this is during the redevelopment of this particular piece of property, the foreshore lease was amended, it was expanded in consultation with the province. However, our zoning was never modified to match the expanded version of the foreshore lease. So a quick look at some of the policy. The Vision to Action contains a few statements regarding this kind of stuff. Talks mostly about downtown Tofino being vibrant, but also really kind of focuses on the idea of a working waterfront as well. This particular application isn't right in the downtown area, though the Vision to Action does kind of stress that connection between the working waterfront as well as the upland property that has some relevance here. And within the transportation and infrastructure section refers to Tofino becoming a transportation hub, which sort of supports this particular application. The official community plan doesn't really apply to the foreshore lease. It actually ends at the basically the high tide line. The overall land use vision within the OCP does support the proposal as it's part of a working harbor. And again, environmental considerations are always kind of considered with any development application. So there's no specific policies pertaining to the foreshore lease. It is actually outside the OCP, but it is relevant to kind of consider some of these overarching policies with regard to the application. The zoning, most of the lease is currently zoned W1. The corner where the floatplane dock is located is zoned MC1, as has been discussed. Basically, again, this zoning amendment will just align the W1 zoning with the existing expanded foreshore lease that was a result of the redevelopment of the property a few years ago. A couple of land use considerations that staff have highlighted within the report, mostly kind of just talking a little bit about the use of the area. Is this an appropriate use for this area? Currently, we have floatplanes kind of maneuvering within the Tofino Harbor in various locations. This particular location coming into Tofino Resort and Marina is a lot safer than what it previously was in iterations as the Way West and the previous iterations of that marina. It will also hopefully allow for some better and more consistent service and does provide another transportation option for both tourists as well as locals here in Tofino. Parking is not a major consideration in staff's understanding. This service we primarily use by tourists coming to visit for short periods of time. However, it may also be used by residents of Tofino, and so we have been working with the applicant to ensure that there will be adequate parking should one of those residents need to leave their vehicle there for a night or two. Environmental considerations, as has been noted, the dock already exists. However, this is kind of a cornerstone of a lot of the development that we consider here in Tofino. So there have been some conversations with the applicant regarding just general kind of safety things as part of a dock, as part of a marina, things like spill kits, as well as the kind of the impact of noise and transportation in that particular area, as well as typically these planes land, this is anecdotal observations, but typically depending on the weather, they often land in Browning Passage and taxi by the crab dock to come into dock there. And that'd be kind of, my understanding is that's their typical protocol. However, depending on weather, that may change. So things like noise and landing within Browning Pass are considerations. However, whether or not they are significant enough to impact this particular application is a little bit difficult for staff to understand at this point. However, we will be referring the application to WildSafe BC, Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resources, as well as other agencies, and hopefully those referrals will help shine some light on that should the application proceed. Flooding and tsunami, it's a foreshore lease, so these are concerns. However, as the zoning amendment doesn't really have much to do with habitable structures, they're not as significant a consideration as would be sort of an upland residential development. The multimodal transportation plan doesn't pertain exactly to this particular application. However, it is important to note that a flight service that brings you straight into kind of the more downtown area of Tofino may provide an opportunity for visitors to the area to come here without a vehicle, which is one of the overarching goals of the MMTPs to provide options for non-vehicular transport or non-personal vehicular transport. And community amenity contribution, there's been a brief discussion with the applicant. They've asked for consideration to be waived from the community amenity contribution. It's outlined in the report, but their primary rationale is that the overall land lift will be very small from this particular rezoning. They're providing a benefit to the community through kind of having this service. And also there will be not very much material change to the actual property. So staff don't really have too much to comment about that as it's outside of our guidelines for community amenity contributions. However, we're happy to continue that conversation at council's request. So options today would be to grant first reading to the amendment bylaw. We can grant first reading as amended if there needs to be some changes. Reject or refuse the application, defer otherwise deal with the application. Staff are currently recommending granting first reading. Next steps would be referrals, hopefully gathering some more information, further discussion with the applicant if required, then bring it back for second reading and moving forward from there into a public hearing. I just wanted to highlight that there may be the potential to request a waiver of the public hearing based on perhaps the COVID situation, as well as maybe the impact of this particular zoning application as it moves forward. It's not a major land use change, so it may not be as critical to hold a public hearing. However, that may be something to discuss if the process moves forward. But just wanted to highlight it at this point. So if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to try and speak to it.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay. Anyone? Okay, well, I do. Yes.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'll support the first reading. However, on the amenities, I tend to disagree that they should, if something does, I mean, if they ever sell, there's no guarantee that they'll keep the floatplane business there. They could develop it for commercial reasons, which, so you've increased the value of the property, which changes zoning.
Thank you. Anyone else on the amenity issue? I agree with Councillor McMaster. I think there's a conversation to have, and for me, the conversation is not so much that they're providing a benefit to the community by having the airplane service, which is true from one perspective, but it does bring some impacts, and this is what I wanted to raise tonight. Was there are two impacts that I think haven't really been considered in the report, and that I think we should think a little bit about, and I'm not going to oppose first reading, but I'd like to see a little bit more information maybe coming back. And the first is, we've heard pretty consistently from people who live in Opitza about the effect of noise of float planes, and this is a bigger issue than just this rezoning, but it is taking a use that is along other parts of the harborfront and then pushing it back down, pushing it down farther south. And the second part of that is the impact on the wildlife management area and the mudflats. And so when Harbour Air is approaching, sometimes when they're approaching the landing, they're flying right over Ducking Flats and the wildlife management area, which is the second largest shorebird reserve on the west coast of Canada. So it would be great if we could also refer this application, I think, to the Wildlife Management Advisory Committee through Tom Reed at the Ministry of Environment, and have some comments maybe brought forward there. And again, I'm not raising this as a way of providing an obstacle to this, but I just think it would be a better, fuller conversation. And just to understand too that our decisions around aircraft, even though we don't have a lot of jurisdiction there, it's a federal issue, but they do impact other other parts of Tofino and where we're situated as well. So yeah, back to the amenity. I don't think it's a bad idea to continue that conversation with them about some kind of amenity there. Tom, sorry, Councillor Steer.
Yeah, Josie, just to follow up for my own information, what does that, if there was a review sent out to the ministry, would that have the potential to impact the other float plane operations in Tofino, or would it's just going to be specific to this one, and the implications would only pertain to this particular application?
I don't know. I think that it would be interesting to hear what they had to say about fixed wing aircraft over the mudflats period, and it would just be more information for second reading to me.
Yeah, through the referral process, we would kind of just seek comments, not necessarily a validation or approval in any way, but hopefully they would be able to provide more information that, as you mentioned, have a bit more of a fuller discussion around those potential impacts.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. I mean, I one of the reasons I think why this occurred to me too is just thinking about everything we've heard lately about volume. And on one hand, yes, it's good to divert people from cars, and on the other hand, per person, a person is emitting a lot more greenhouse gas coming in on a plane than they are in a car. But just again, like that fullness of the information, I think we need to have. I mean, if more volume and more flights is more noise and more disturbance, and I just want to know more about it. Yeah.
Just in the interest of fairness, and I've said this on other zoning applications, I think that conversation on CAC should happen. Even if it is a very small contribution we're talking about, I think that should be applied equally to zoning applications. So yeah, I would like to see some more talk around that and see where we can get with that.
Thanks.
I'm wondering, are they currently operating float plane operations there already all the time, and this is just relocating it?
No, it's legalizing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Law?
I live actually very close, so I can hear this float plane take off twice a day, I believe it's doing it now. It's very quiet. It's probably the quietest float plane I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But that could change.
Well, the Otters and Twin Otters are
depending on
quieter than the other planes of the other companies.
I did want to note that. I do think I agree with all the councillors, mayor and councillors on discussing CAC's, the amenity contributions. I think that should continue.
Any other questions or comments? Anything else from you, Peter?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, I think there may be some more information brought forward for a second reading and have a bit more of a discussion at that point. And I think I kind of understand what it's been saying so far.
Good. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, well, in that case,
I'll move that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1293/2020 attached as Appendix 1 to the report dated August 25th, 2020 be introduced and read a first time.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
All right. We have the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from August 17th for receipt. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions noted? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And we have the Special Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from August 17th for receipt.
Receipt.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? They were short. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Any questions? Elise, any public Q&A?
There's a few items before that. There's business initiated by council members, but if there is none,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stop there, but that's okay if there's none.
There
are no questions.
There's no questions, okay. All right. Motion to go in camera then.
I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A and C of the Community Charter to discuss matters related to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent, and employee relations.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried.